right, so what we have now then is the shape that we're looking for. Now we can start to think about exactly how wide do we want these columns and how tall do we want these rows. And the best way to go about doing this is to go get in there with some kind of pixel-based ruler and go measure the dimensions of all of these squares. It is really tedious, and I'm very happy to tell you, you do not have to do that. I have done that work for you. So now we'll go back and add that information that's going to describe exactly how big and wide our columns are and how tall our rows are. And the syntax that we use to do that is going to go up here on our wrapper. So on the grid container on the parent. It's going to go right after we have our display grid, we have our gap, and we can now add to this how many columns are we going to have. This is grid-template-columns. So we're telling grid exactly how many columns that we're going to have here. Usually when people write this type of code, they specify this first. I wanted to put the emphasis on the numbers first, so we did that. Now we're coming back and entering how many columns we have here. So as my measurements have deduced, and I've done this in pixels because we want these to match up as closely as possible to the painting, these numbers are 124 pixels, 376 pixels, and 42 pixels. 42 pixels. So you can just, using this grid template column syntax, you can line up however many dimensions that you want for however many columns that you want, and grid will do this particular type of layout. So you can have different widths for those columns. You can have different units of measure for these columns if you wanted. Here I've used all pixels, but I could have mixed it up. I could have done some rems, I could have done some percents, I could have done ems, and there's a couple of other units we'll talk about later. So that gets us a little bit closer in terms of our rows and such, or in terms of our columns and such. So now we can do the same thing with our rows, grid-template-rows. And the numbers here would be 170 pixels, 210 pixels, 61 pixels, and 61 pixels. The lineup here isn't exactly perfect. Remember that this started as a painting done by a human, not by a robot. And so Mondrian has things just slightly off, but we get pretty close to the painting layout here. So as you see now, we have all of our cells more or less on top of each other. You'll notice that we have a bit of a gap over here to the side of letter C, and that is because that is the way gaps work. So we've got gaps all around just like that. And now we can start to fill in these cells with the appropriate colors. So the easiest way to do this is the following. Here, right again on the wrapper, I'm going to set a background color of black, which will make it very hard to see what we're doing exactly, but that will wind up filling in the grid gap area with the black lines in between. And then, now all we need to do is the following. Here on our div, we can get rid of this opacity part of this. So that makes things pop out quite a bit more. And then all we need to do is assign our various colors. So here in letter C, which is the big red box, our background color. Using an eyedropper tool, I determined the exact shade of red. This is DE271D. So that'll give us a big red box. Yes?
The gap automatically adds to all sides or all after the first? I don't see a gap on the far left.
Yes, all after the first, exactly as you see here. Yep. And then here for letter D, we have a background color of 015 CA0. If you want, of course, you can just use the red, blue, and yellow. That's okay too. And then down here in letter G, we have a background color of ECDB6B. That is the shade of yellow. And then the last little bit of weirdness that you see here is from our background image. We can get rid of that. So that's up here on our wrapper around line number 5. Get rid of that background. And we have something approximating the painting here by Mondrian. All right. That is something you would not be able to do with Flexbox, for sure. Any questions on this basics of grid and how this starts to work in terms of layout? Any questions?
Can that last gap be reset, like with margin and last child?
I don't think you can use last child specifically with the gap, but you could try. The gap gets set on the parent, so it's on the wrapper, not on the individual cell. So I'm not sure that that is necessarily going to work. Good idea, though.